Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US political update where I'm going to take you, I'm going to thread the needle from Infantino and FIFA and Trump receiving a peace medal to 3 days at national parks in the US and Trump's name on the side of buildings, all the way to pardoning the former Honduran leader on account of, well, even though he is responsible for huge crimes of drug trafficking and whatnot, which is a glaring example of hypocrisy when apparently they are bombing Venezuelan boats involved in drug trafficking because this is a threat to the safety of the United States. Just the insanity of what is going on across the pond at the moment is quite incredible. So that's what I'm going to do. But before I attempt to do this, please remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already, to keep abreast of all the information that is happening regarding particularly the war in Ukraine, but elsewhere around the world. Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start with Donald Trump at the FIFA World Cup ceremony for deciding which nations are in which groups. Donald Trump, because this is a World Cup that is being co-hosted between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The leaders were there. I guess that would be fairly uncomfortable to pull out some balls, so to speak, and see what was written on them and see which nations go into which groups. But apparently there was not apparently, there clearly was an addition to the ceremony, which was the giving out of this FIFA Peace Prize to Donald Trump. And apparently this was super hastily organized after Donald Trump was not given the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, does Trump realize what's going on here? Or does he actually think, because he said this is one of the proudest moments of his life, receiving this prize. This prize was just cobbled together so that he could receive it because he keeps whinging about the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm hoping that really what was going on here was the Nobel Peace Prize peeps got together with FIFA, a massively corrupt organization, by the way, and Infantino seems to be just hanging out with Trump all the time. Anyway, that's by the by. I'm hoping that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee got together with FIFA and said, look, we don't want to give this guy a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he says he's stopped all these wars, but he hasn't really. Either that's an outright lie and he wasn't really responsible for what took place, or hasn't really solved them. There's still stuff going on between Hamas and Israel. And the guy's trying to start a war in Venezuela, and he's blowing up boats with civilians on out of his jurisdictions, these extrajudicial killings. But he really wants a peace prize, and Nobel's just never going to give him a peace prize. So can you guys just do that for us? If we slip you a tenner, would you just give Trump a new FIFA peace prize? I mean, what the hell is a football organization giving out peace prizes? I mean, really? But anyway, he gave himself a medal, and by that I mean like he put it on himself because no one else was willing to do it. This is what took place.
Please welcome the very first winner of the FIFA Peace Prize, the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Please. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is your prize. This is your Peace Prize. There is also a beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go.
Jesus wept.
Right now. Okay, let me hold. Fantastic. Excellent. Please.
Just absolutely staggering, isn't it? Now, what he also said in that, Infantino, I'm talking about, is when he gave the award to Trump, and afterwards it cuts off there, but he said that you are delivering peace around the world or something like that in your own way. I mean, this is double speak for you're bombing civilians in the Caribbean, and that's your very own way of giving delivering peace to the world. And you're just on the edge of a war in Venezuela because you want their oil. But anyway, here's a peace prize, and you're doing it in your own inimitable way. Just absolutely incredible. So that's where we're starting today. Then we're going to go via Trump giving himself his own peace prize to this, the United States Institute of Peace, which I do believe is not actually, it's one of these quasi quangos that is quasi. I mean, the quango is quasi. So it is. I'm sure it's not under the jurisdiction of the American state in the same way, like the funding to do with it. When this was all up for grabs, the funding was up for grabs during like Doge and whatnot. There was some controversy because actually the Institute for the Peace, you couldn't have Doge just marching into there and doing their thing, although I believe they did. Anyway, something like that. Trump appears to think it's fine to whack his name on the side of the building. Donald J. Trump, United States Institute of Peace. He just unilaterally renamed the building. Absolutely incredible. But, this presidency is all about himself. He says, you know what? Nobel Peace Prize, FIFA Peace Prize. And he said it at the FIFA Peace Prize ceremony that he said, look, it's not about me. It's about saving the lives of these people. That's really what I wanted. You couldn't give a monkeys, mate. This is all about you. Absolutely all about you. Your presidency is all about you. You are not being the president of the United States of America to make the lives of American people better. You are the president of the United States of America to make your own life better through creating a legacy of huge amounts of money going to your family through massive grifting of both you and your family to the tune of gajillions of spondoolies. This is not about making the world a better place. You are not like, and I'm not trying to be all self-righteous or whatever, but if I was to be the Prime Minister of the UK, and I've said this to you before, I would be arguing for sure, not arguing, I'd be seeking to find out exactly what would be the optimal way of making the most people in the UK have better lives. Do you know, and even that's really complicated. It is about the most people, or it's about bringing a certain subset of people up. Is it, I'd be trying to work out how to be the best leader I could be, not for me, but for the country, because that's the point of being the leader of a country, is to protect your people, to leave the country in a better place than when you took over, so on and so forth. But for Donald Trump, it's not even on his radar. It's not on his radar. Anyway, I think this kind of activity is as good a signpost to that reality as you can find. And then you get this, because it doesn't stop there. So we now understand that the US National Park Service has for the first time made access to its parks free on June the 14th, explicitly tying it to Donald Trump's birthday. The inauguration of the public celebration of the leader's birthday marks a very significant step on the road to authoritarianism in the US. I mean, this is what authoritarian countries do under dictatorships. It's like, oh, it's all about me. We're going to have a celebration for my birthday. Okay, so in the UK, we had the Queen's birthday and the King's. It's not really a massive celebration. It's just like, oh, it's Queen's birthday, King's birthday. And actually, there were two birthdays a year, the real birthday and then the celebratory birthday. In other words, it's more about some kind of pomp and circumstance to do with whatever it is. But that's kind of a bit of a historical remnant, I think, from times where that would mean, I mean, no one really gives a toss when the Queen's or King's birthday is these days. But if you have like a true dictator, then it's all about putting images of yourself up everywhere, going into every shop. You've got an image of the leader, dear leader, up there. And every single department has a picture of the president or the leader or whatever it is in government, and so on and so forth. And it's my birthday, therefore we're going to mark the importance of my birthday by having, in this case, the US National Park Service having free access days. And I just think it is indeed another step on the road to authoritarianism. And it's also slightly more nefarious than that, because we understand that almost as significant is a clear message being sent by 2 dates associated with the Black community being deleted. So despite both being federal holidays, parks are no longer free to enter on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the 3rd Monday in January, and Juneteenth on June the 19th. State-sponsored commemorations of the serving leader's birthday are a standard feature of authoritarian states, but are almost unknown in democratic states. A few examples: North Korea celebrates the birthdays of Kim Il-sung, April the 15th, Day of the Sun, and Kim Jong-il, February 16th, Day of the Shining Star, with massive parades and other celebrations. These have continued even after their deaths. Nazi Germany made Hitler's birthday a public holiday. Conveniently, Trump doesn't need to do this, as June the 14th is already the federal Flag Day holiday, with parades and other events. Mao's birthday, Mao Zedong, was initially commemorated modestly, but grew into a nationwide event as his cult of personality expanded. It was downplayed after 1978 by Deng Xiaoping. Romania's dictator Nicolae Ceausescu's birthday on January the 26th was celebrated with huge rallies, songs, and mandatory gifts. He was shot on December the 25th, 1989, after being overthrown only a month before his 72nd birthday. Saddam Hussein's birthday was a major event in Iraq, with lavish events, improbably ornate birthday cakes, and Saddam himself appearing in front of cheering crowds of supporters. The governments of democratic states almost never celebrate their leaders' birthdays. The one exception, highly relevant to the US today, is that of the autocratic populist regime of Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte, who is currently awaiting trial at The Hague. National Park Service's public recognition of Trump's birthday appears to be unprecedented in US history, but as the examples above show, has far more in common with dictatorships and authoritarian populist regimes. I just really would like to know what Republicans think about this. Both old school Republicans, and I'd hope they'd be like, yeah, Trump's a douche, and then Trump voters, people who voted for Trump and still kind of support him. Like, how would they feel if Barack Obama did that? They'd be going nuts, no doubt. And yet I'm sure this is like, yeah, he's great, I love him, so he deserves a birthday. Really? Do you not see that you wouldn't do that elsewise? It's just crazy times in the United States. Crazy times. Now, Trump himself has had all sorts of rumors circulating about him concerning his health. I've done many videos on this. I just thought this was an interesting one by Congresswoman Sydney Kamlaga Dove. She says the Alzheimer's drug Leqembi, I don't know, is administered through an infusion, for example, through the hand. Okay, it can cause swelling, bleeding, or fluid leakage in the brain, requiring regular MRIs. Well, we know he's having MRIs, and it can cause tiredness. And we know that he's falling asleep really quite regularly at the moment. I mean, I don't know. The amount of, as someone says here, the amount of posts about President Biden's poor health and sleepy Joe Biden. In fact, I'm going to show you some incredible cognitive dissonance reduction from Fox News. I'm going to do that right now, so bear with me. Actually, Jimmy Kimmel does a good job of putting these together. Just the clips from Fox News talking about Joe Biden first.
Biden did manage to get in, well, what might be a short nap, or maybe I should just say nodding off, or maybe just resting his tired old eyes for about, 12 seconds, and then struggling to keep his eyes open, staring off into the distance, again, befuddled, bewildered, dazed, and confused.
And where is Joe Biden right now? Where is their focus? Not only is he at an international climate change conference, but he's falling asleep there.
I'm looking at Donald Trump in these meetings in the Middle East, and then I look at the clips of President Biden literally falling asleep in the middle of an international meeting.
Creaky, creepy, sleepy Joe Biden. Try to say that fast.
Sleepy Joe.
with the sunglasses on so you can't tell that he's nodded off.
Joe Biden's superpower is sleeping.
All Joe Biden does is eat and sleep. Basically the same schedule as my newborn.
Does Joe Biden sleep in a crib or a crypt?
We are past his beddy time. Joe had his warm milky from his favorite sippy cup.
You have Joe Biden who's sleeping on a beach every single day.
Joe Biden who's sleeping at the beach. Look at him there. You will never see a picture like that of Donald Trump.
Who wants to sleep in public? He's sleeping.
Wait a minute.
Okay. And so we all know what has happened with Donald Trump sleeping. Like, he is sleeping way more than Joe Biden ever did. But here are, this is how Fox News, for example, now talk about it.
Wallace took a little siesta during his noontime cabinet meeting.
This war started, it never would have happened if you'd been president. But this war is going on and the president is trying to end it.
Would you please lower your voice?
I mean, that was just one example there. But now let's see how Fox News deal with it.
Forced to go into overdrive today to defend him.
If you sleep 3 hours or 4 hours a night, you're probably going to close your eyes, whether you're 79 or 49.
If this president closes his eyes for a moment, it's like, what's wrong with him? I mean, it is so laughable, Stuart.
They just won't quit, Martha, will they? Just
No,
won't.
I mean, it is laughable.
I mean, who wouldn't doze off in one of these things? 3 hours after working a 50-hour week, I imagine.
I believe the man doesn't sleep either. Yes. All right. Well, except for maybe for a quick 10-minute intervals.
Thomas Edison believed in the 10-minute nap, by the way. What would they say? We wouldn't have electricity, right?
Right.
Honestly, it infuriates me. Like the nature of the propaganda at Fox News and Newsmax and OAN is so overt. Those channels are just mouthpieces for their dear leader. They don't criticize him for putting his name on buildings and giving himself reflecting his birthday in national holidays or whatever. And instead, we get just fawning over him, and no doubt no criticism over him giving himself a medal because he's whinged so much about the Nobel Peace Prize that FIFA had to devise this new Peace Prize to appease him. There's no criticism of that by Fox News, but instead they go to town on Joe Biden falling asleep and then completely excuse Donald Trump for falling asleep. It is not acceptable. Luckily enough, in the UK, we have Channel 4 News, for example, just one of our terrestrial TV stations. They have, I think, a more realistic approach to reporting Donald Trump.
Good evening. President Trump seemed to nod off in yesterday's televised marathon cabinet meeting. But when he rose from his slumber, he launched what is probably the most offensive tirade against an ethnic minority of his political career, a career laced with them. In his sights, the Somalis who live mainly in Minnesota, most of whom are American citizens. He called them garbage and told them to go back home, amongst other things. This is a new low from a president for whom denigrating minorities is a political calling card. He launched his first campaign with an attack on Mexicans. He kicked off his first presidency with a travel ban against Muslims. He's empowered his ICE immigration agents to make sweeping arrests. And he's now also questioned the right to stay of millions of legal migrants from over a dozen countries. What is going on?
And I'll leave it there. I mean, it's a pretty eviscerating 10-minute section there, but yet what is going on there? Absolutely incredible. Now, interesting that in his cabinet meeting, he also seemed to have a pop at JD Vance. I don't know what you think about this.
Mr. President, do you think he should resign over the fraud scandal in his state?
And who should?
Tim Walz, over the fraud scandal in his state.
Look, I think the man's a grossly incompetent man. I thought that from the day I watched JD destroy him in the debate. I was saying, who was more incompetent, that man or my man? I had a man and he had a man. They were both incompetent. And I had a man and a woman. I thought she was very incompetent too, but now she's leading the field. And I think she's leading the field in this, for the nomination. Anyway, look, that's...
Mr. President.
I don't know who he's referring to, but he's calling JD Vance incompetent. I had a man, they had a man, they were both incompetent. See, really? Okay, that's a fascinating insight. I think what might have happened there is there's no veto. That may be Alzheimer's connected, by the way. There's no veto there to stop him from saying things that otherwise you'd stop yourself saying, which is JD Vance. If you remember at the beginning of the campaign when he was selected as vice president, because people were quite surprised at that, and this was your tech oligarchs and affiliated people and Don Trump Jr. and etc., convincing Donald Trump that JD Vance was the right guy for the job, even though he had no charisma and no one really liked him. And so he was possibly seen by Donald Trump as being a little bit incompetent. At the beginning, he didn't actually fared okay in that debate against Tim Walz, because people were expecting JD Vance to go hard at Tim Walz, and it was all quite nicey. And that people came away from that debate thinking, oh, no, we weren't expecting that. But generally speaking, at that time, JD Vance was seen as pretty incompetent. And I'm wondering whether Donald Trump's brain is just going back to that point and thinking, we thought Tim Walz was incompetent, obviously, because they were Democrats. And JD Vance was seen as incompetent. Put them together, I was wondering which one was going to be the most incompetent. But wow, what a kick in the goolies for JD Vance, who I guess he was probably there, was he? Or maybe he wasn't there at a cabinet meeting, but might have watched this afterwards. Wow. Be thinking, oh, cheers, Don. Thanks for throwing me under the bus there. You think I'm incompetent. Now, talking about incompetence, but, less incompetence, more criminal. CNN has been reporting on, as you can imagine, it's really big news at the moment, Pete Hegseth and the it depends how you interpret this, either the murder of civilians in the Caribbean or the war crimes involving civilians. I think it's actually invalid to call them war crimes because they're not a war. This is not a war. So therefore it's murder. It's just murder and it's illegal. But anyway, there's been this idea that Pete Hegseth is going to get thrown under the bus for ordering this. Either him or Admiral Bradley or all of them. In fact, you had Judge Napolitano on Newsmax recently saying they should all be done, everyone from top to bottom. And that's a super Republican commentator saying they should all be done from top to bottom for war crimes. Wow. So this is CNN discussing some more revelations concerning this with regard to Admiral Bradley.
Breaking news, waving their arms. Sources telling CNN the admiral who formally called for the second strike on the alleged drug boat in the Caribbean told lawmakers that the survivors were waving at something in the air before the second strike, although they say it is unclear whether they were surrendering or asking a U.S. aircraft for help. We are also learning that Admiral Bradley told lawmakers that the boat was going to meet a larger vessel heading to Suriname. Suriname's a small South American country east of Venezuela. And that may matter because U.S. drug enforcement officials tell us that drug trafficking routes via Suriname are primarily destined for European markets, not the United States. Of course, President Trump has explicitly said that this boat was an imminent threat heading to the United States, saying, quote, the strike occurred while the terrorists were heading to the United States.
So this is a problem. It appears that the boat was actually going in a completely other direction, had 11 people on board, unlikely to all be drug smugglers. You're going to be putting drugs on there, not people. So it could well be that these people smugglers, as well as drug smugglers, going to Suriname, gets blown up. 2 survivors on clinging to wreckage, waving at the sky. So they're either surrendering or they are asking for help, and then you blow them up. So that's a whole nother level of illegal. This is not looking good for Pete Hegseth, and it's not looking good actually for anyone involved with this. And it also shows that the Trump administration, I think, are lying about this as well. This is really, really controversial. But it's also unsurprising when you have purged yourself of JAGs, of military attorneys general, who would tell you whether what you're doing is illegal or not. If as Pete Hegseth did, you're going to purge these people at the beginning of your administration, then it's probably a prescient move that would indicate that you're going to commit some war crimes or break the law. And then you have Admiral Halsey, who took over early retirement after only a year in the job of CENTCOM, I think it is, there, like in charge of this area, because it appears he was unhappy with these strikes because they were illegal. It is incredibly controversial. Okay, so then that brings us on to the president of Honduras. Just pretty incredible that Trump has then gone and pardoned someone. So the whole idea about striking these boats is there are narco terrorists who are threatening the US and killing. Literally, they've talked about the number of people that have been killed. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're talking about like hundreds of millions of people. It's like the population of the US is like 350 million. Like, what are you talking about? When you're saying that these people we have saved hundreds of millions of people's lives by blowing up these boats. Anyway, completely ridiculous. But the idea is that these supposed narco terrorists are directly threatening the US because they are responsible for getting drugs into the US. The justification for these killings is to stop drugs coming into the US. And then in the same breath, he is pardoning all sorts of people. I mean, he's pardoned people involved in drugs smuggling and the guy on the dark web that was involved with drugs. He's been pardoned, and now we've got the former Honduran leader pardoned. Let's go to Jessica Tarlov fighting the good fight on Fox News.
We know that this isn't a hoax because a best case scenario is that Admiral Bradley, who they're trying to put all the blame on, is the one who authorized the second lethal strike that took out these people who, again, it was violation of the law that they were killed. We also know that the U.S. doesn't always do this because there was another strike in the Caribbean back in September where a Colombian and an Ecuadorian person survived, and we repatriated them home. We didn't even take them to court here for the crimes that we knew that they'd committed. We sent them back to their home country.
Which is an acceptance, so they weren't actually drug smugglers and they probably were fishermen or similar.
There is tons of reporting now. You want to call the Washington Post fake news, that's fine. The New York Times story, by the way, didn't exonerate them. We also have the Wall Street Journal saying that a DOD official says that Hegseth was the, quote, target engagement authority, so the guy in charge. We also know, writ large, that the story about this administration being focused on eradicating American society of drugs is absolute BS because Donald Trump went and pardoned. He's walking free now. The former Honduran president who trafficked 400 tons of cocaine into America. Why did he get to leave prison early? He had a 45-year sentence, which, by the way, Trump administration #1 prosecuted him because Roger Stone is his buddy and because he wrote Donald Trump a letter calling him Your Excellency and saying that they shared conservative values. The problem is the story is changing every 10 minutes. It went from fake news to the frog shooting narco terrorists to it is not changing at all. Yeah, actually, once you let me talk, it's completely consistent. Okay. Now it's Admiral Bradley's fault, and I presume that he's getting lawyered up right now.
No. Prediction, nothing will come of this.
Yeah.
Haley?
I sometimes wonder whether Jesse Waters is the person I'd most like to punch in the face in the world. Sometimes I'm thinking, God, Jesse Waters or Vladimir Putin. Jesse Waters is close. I just despise that man. Anyway, so you have this situation where Trump has pardoned yet another person that should not be pardoned, and without really knowing who he is or what he's done or what he hasn't done or what the context is. He keeps saying, well, someone told me that that was a good idea and so I did it. Or, I hear that X, so I did Y. And, do you make your own decisions or do other people just make decisions for you? Just tell you to sign things and you just dutifully agree? How much money has Trump been pocketing in exchange for pardons? Well, let's have a look at pardons over time. 2001 to 2009, 189 pardons. That's under Bush. Obama, 2009 to 2017, 212 pardons. Trump in 2017 to 21, 144 pardons. Biden, 2021 to 2025, 80 pardons. Trump in 2025 onwards, just in 2025, actually, 8 months plus the 10 months, whatever it is, 10 months, 1,500 plus. So, a huge amount of them were all the January the 6th people, but then just he's pardoning all sorts of people continuously. It is absolutely insane. Let's get a little more on this, the latest Honduran leader's pardon.
My last thing, anything on this Honduras pardon you got? And it's so crazy. President Juan Hernandez of Honduras was officially pardoned. Or we said this was coming earlier in the week, but that's now happened. He was at the center of what authorities have characterized as one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. This is kind of a DGAF moment, I guess, for these guys. Like in the middle of bombing Venezuela over imaginary fentanyl, they're doing this pardon. It's pretty crazy. What are you hearing on that?
I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a Republican to defend this one. It comes as, first of all, just how discordant it is that we're ramping up military operations against these boats off the coast of Venezuela, and Trump threatened we might do land strikes in Venezuela in the coming days.
In the press conference yesterday, I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, and
cabinet meeting rather.
Nominally about drug trafficking. I mean, I think there's more to it than that. At the same time, he releases this guy, gives a pardon to the president of Honduras, who prosecutors say ran an international drug cartel and who bragged about stuffing drugs up the nose of gringos. Again, I'm paraphrasing only slightly. That's what he said. I think there's strange connections here with Roger Stone took his case. Trump is sympathetic to anyone who feels like he's been victim of a political prosecution. There's no evidence that's what this was, but that's what Trump has convinced himself. Also, the investigation into this president started during Trump's first term. There's a crypto angle here as well, where Honduras under this president was offered safe space for some of these crypto tech leaders.
It's creating a crypto city. Peter Thiel. It was like you can buy and sell twink blood with cryptocurrency there. There's just a lot of opportunities potentially.
There's a lot of opportunities to make money, and that's probably at the end of the day what this was about. But this is a head spinning pardon, and one that I'm waiting to hear from like police unions and other law enforcement officials say, hey, this guy flooded our streets with drugs. How is this making us any safer?
Yeah, I should correct President Hernandez, though, that we live in a pluralistic, multicultural society. Okay, the drugs are going up the nose of people, not just gringos. Okay, not just gringos. Jonathan Lemire, man, thanks for hopping on.
So that's Jonathan Lemire on the bulwark with Tim Miller. But I think it's absolutely stunning. And here is Trump himself talking about this.
From prison
yesterday. Well, he was the president, and they had some drugs being sold in their country. And because he was the president, they went after him. That was a Biden.
No, that wasn't. He was fully responsible for the drug trafficking, and it wasn't a Biden thing. It was done on your tenure. Your investigation was continued by Biden, and I think, am I right in saying it was one of your judges that convicted him?
The horrible witch hunt, which was, a lot of people in Honduras asked me to do that, and I did it. I feel very
good about doing it because lots of people in Honduras asked me to do it, so I did it. Okay. Right. Okay.
Which was, a lot of people in Honduras asked me to do that, and I did it. I feel very good about it. If you have some drug dealers in your country and you're the president, you don't necessarily put the president in jail for 45 years. That was a Biden-inspired witch hunt.
No, it wasn't.
Letter impact your decision on that, sir?
So someone then tries to ask him about Roger Stone and connections to Roger Stone, but he just refuses and goes on to speak to someone else. Let's get the last view here from the Pod Save America team.
And obviously the president cares a great deal about drug trafficking, which is why he pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was involved in one of the biggest drug trafficking rings in modern history. So he cares a lot about that. There's just a story in the New York Post before we started recording that there's a Long Island drug dealer who was freed by Trump because, of course, had connections with the family. I think with Kushner's dad, who was freed by Trump.
Maybe they met in prison.
Yeah, probably. Freed by Trump, now convicted again of molesting his kid's nanny and threatening a synagogue congregant. That's the headline in the New York Post. So again, this is an administration that cares deeply about prosecuting drug crimes. We know that. Did you see the report?
Just nuts, isn't it? It's nuts. I don't know that I could have imagined the Trump administration to be as incompetent and morally bankrupt as it is. I'm sorry, it just is. And, don't say I didn't tell you so. Yeah, whatever. But actually, it's worse. It is worse. Just horrendous. Anyway, that's enough for me. Take care. I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.